My big ass butt. Wait, I need to get my Lindsay maybe? $17, $18. Yeah, fucking asshole. Show more. Oh. See? My last video was not even the fucking regular, or the bots that regulate. I'm actually down for that. Like, having bots that just, like, leave comments of, I guess, almost a word that I have said associated. It, like, or that I verbally fucking associate something, like a word to go with what I was talking about. To general. I guess, like, I think it's for the chapters, or I thought it was for the chapter thing, but pretty sure it's also, like, something to do with Russia. Oh, that's my thing. Okay. See, usually my video would be first. Fucking hot in here. There we go.
Trump releases a new must-see video showing justice coming for Hillary. Well,
That is creepy.
our analysis.
Come on.
Fast and headache relief, so he can become.
You didn't even notice that. No.
The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation has asked me to make a video, but I'm not originally Canadian, which can be a problem for broadcasting. For example, what percentage of your viewers watch your videos with subtitles on? 3.9%, something like that. It's like 9%. Mine's 21%.
What?
This year's census had 8 questions about language, but a non-census question would be about accents, the less talked about language barrier in the world.
I have a lot of issues about my accent.
Ida definitely has trouble being understood.
It's a daily thing.
Between her accent and her choice of filming from a tasting night at a local modern art museum, I was wondering, should I subtitle her? A few years ago in a documentary, I myself was subtitled. I can see her. People were laughing during the segment, but was the laughing at and not with? It was time to do some preliminary interviews. Do you remember a time where you or someone you know was confused by my accent?
Oh, we're talking about you now? Oh, right, that's the whole point.
You're making it sound like this is an ego trip.
When you say the word deck as it's a you want somebody to work on your deck.
When you say happening, you say happening. Dude, how many syllables are
I think
I'm
can.
trying to say smoked cheese.
Smoked cheese. Is that a problem?
With something like a smoked or something like very strong. I couldn't understand like smoked cheese.
I don't care about smoked cheese.
Smoked. Okay, wait. How the fuck am I supposed to test for this shit? Okay.
But what about making chip?
I remember going to meetings with you
I think
and
a
Rob
button and mitten
being really worried about
has a
people,
double
understanding what
letter
you're saying.
circle.
Like investor meetings, and I could tell they're
I was
like,
supposed to have the
wow,
weird
I
Boston
just
accent.
no
Sometimes I say
idea
can.
at all
Oh, my E's are
what was
E.
going on.
I had to do something about this. But what specifically was the problem?
When people have had difficulty understanding you in conversation, it is more to do with the economical way in which you use mouth movement.
Yeah, because I have to see people's mouths move for some reason.
Kind of a robotic, like monotone,
Kiwi robot man.
but especially where there might be like the hum of a refrigerator in the background, like competing with your frequency range.
You can have a very monotone.
Okay, he said, it's difficult to hear you if an appliance is plugged in. Before going any further, I needed to deal with this variable. CBC aren't paying me the big Borden bucks just to find out that I mumble. Jack Chambers isn't just Canada's most eligible grandfather. He's also Canada's most influential English language linguist. He named the term
Canadian deity,
which is basically
Take an American and then have aspirations of being British.
as well as the term
Canadian raising, the most common phonological feature of Canadian English.
He also has a Wikipedia article. Unlike rival Canadian YouTuber Yute Lee,
Right,
in your
it was just like that
professional
phone
opinion, do you think that I have a speech impediment?
Your wife says that. My wife says it to me all the time. You're mumbling. I can't understand a word
Yeah.
you said. You have no speech impediment. Don't worry. You don't have to go to a speech therapist. When people say that, it's because they don't know that you're using a bunch of vowels that don't match the ones that they would use there.
I was heartened to hear that Jack concurred with my opinion that Cowell was projecting his own problems onto immigrant populations. So if the misunderstandings in the subtitles are all related to
How?
the accent, what to do about it? One person mentioned something during an interview that gave me an idea.
Airport.
One day
Fucking
you
pronounces their name
put on
wrong.
this fake
Errol.
Canadian
I'm like,
accent
Earl.
to
They're like,
make your face or
no,
something.
actually Errol.
And,
I was like, hey? They're like, oh, the VA. I'm like, Oliver?
What you were saying.
They were
What
like,
I just learned
do you even know what you're saying? Like, that's not his name. And I was like,
Problem solved.
Is there going to be like a big
Okay.
reveal at the end where you're like, and now here presenting Paige with a Canadian accent?
Yes, and we'll be using research tools popular with beer league universities to quantify what the benefits are of having a Canadian accent. But first, what is a Canadian accent? Like, what are the dimensions of
In
it?
Canada, it's a strange phenomenon, but the middle class
Yeah.
native Canadian English accent is pretty much homogenous all the way
That's
from
what I mean. I have like
Halifax
sometimes
to
weird
Victoria.
accents.
Canadians who
I
have
just
been
say
middle
A's
class for
weird.
more than one generation, they speak pretty much the way I speak
Rough.
now.
But I was
The rough
confused because we all hear
Garage.
Coming
But that
from
says
Alberta,
garage.
I have a lot of friends and family that, have the whole like, hey, dad, going out for a smoke.
Let's go for a dart, Let's go for a rip.
What's it? A dad is like a smoke, right?
Yeah.
What's a
Darts,
Go
cigarettes.
for a rip.
Weed. Okay.
There are working class features in Canadian English which are different from the middle class features. Saying yous as the plural of you, for instance. What are you doing today? We was going. Certain vowels get changed, which are actually fairly common in working class accents all over the English speaking world.
It turned out that Canada's graphic designers, insurance adjusters, and video editors
That's why I
all
guess
spoke
maybe
with one
it's
united
all
voice when
making
they
that
said,
again.
I'm gonna go get sushi, but first I need to decompress from yoga. So what's the first step in me swapping my boring middle-class New Zealand accent for a boring Canadian equivalent? Well, just like saying the bay instead of the sticks, the first step starts with vocabulary.
Like the obvious one, hey, and I can't believe how much I say it.
That's the easiest one. I mean, once you've used the local vocabulary once or twice, it's hard for you to use the one that you used to use.
The second phase is the much more obvious and difficult one, pronunciation. But how do you pronounce things like Canadian? There's obviously the stereotypes, which
Okay.
are a little off.
It's not how they always make it sound on TV, like with the boot and
A
the
boot?
A.
They're like literally saying a boot.
You mean roundabout?
Yeah.
That's a pronunciation difference that Canada shares with very few other English-speaking countries. It's called Canadian raising. In Canada, we have a raised vowel. It's actually an and it's about. And people hearing that know that it was different, but couldn't imitate it unless they were phoneticians, because it's not a vowel sound that we have an equivalent for in the writing system. So they just raised it even higher and said, oh, you Canadians, you say a boot. It's a boot time. Ha, ha, ha. No, we don't. Nobody does now, and nobody ever did.
About.
It's about.
Of course, very style differences.
That's why that JJ
vocabulary
guy, Cameron
influences.
intentionally said
It's
that. I'm
very
like, yeah, I
much
think
a
it's
North
kind of like a
American
sticking.
accent.
And
Every
think that's like,
Canadian who goes
He was like-
abroad is almost always accused of being American.
I always think, okay, well, at least they probably think I was American.
But much like Boston Pizza and multiplex theaters, the bulk of the accent is neither Canadian or American, but a continental product of both countries.
The Americans don't own this accent that I'm speaking. It's every bit as much as it is theirs.
But will it be mine as much as it is yours, Jack? What will it take? What can I do to kind of like make my accent zero confusion for a Canadian?
You have to replace that "a" with "a" sometimes. You have to say accent instead of accent.
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 Yeah, so instead of said, you have to say bad.
Bad.
Bad, not bad. Yeah, you're right. This was when I realized that I needed to get an accent coach. Jack mentioned some professional phoneticians, but I'm working for
That's funny.
CBC on a contract, so I headed over to Fiverr with what was left of my boredom bucks after buying this green screen, and found professional Canadian actor Kevin McLaughlin. COVID had put his life on hold, so to me, it could be solved. I was to be the happy beneficiary of a lockdown, which was ruining the progress of his career. But was he really Canadian? Well, his internet
Yeah,
connection
I'll
was
put it on.
shockingly bad, which meant that I was constantly interrupting.
Some of the times I found
No,
that
don't.
accent work.
Don't worry, keep.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Canadian confirmed. Over several sessions, we worked through the accent.
Right from the get-go, the biggest thing I talk about is just the physical world of it first.
We talked about things like
Where the resonance is happening. In the front.
hmm,
Mm, mm,
hmm,
mm,
hmm, hmm,
mm,
hmm, hmm,
mm.
What is happening?
Okay. I always thought that North Americans sounded kind of nasal, but it turns out the nice way to say that
It's
is
a very bright and a very forward sound.
something particularly challenging for me is the syrup slurping grin.
Our sound is almost like gymnastics for the lips and the mouth.
This is probably what I'm going to struggle the most with because I have
Economical mouth movements.
When we make R sounds,
Economical
you know, if I was to say ah in that sort of more British,
Oh.
you see it's a small sort of movement. But I would say R, I'm almost going R.
Is it
Yeah.
I actually don't. I think this is going to be very hard for me. Ah. So the British would be like, ah.
Yeah.
And then the Canadians would be like, ah.
R.
Your British one was great.
R's are a key part of Kevin's Kiwi conversion course for a reason. People have always told me that something was wrong
Like
with
if I
my
were
R's.
Carl.
People like Carl. Sorry, I mean
Carl.
Carl. So why does North America sound like an entire continent
Who's drunk?
perpetually stuck and talk like a pirate day?
We all grew up speaking this accent that's based on 18th century British and Irish forebears.
Yeah.
That's all of North America.
So I
And then,
was
of course,
right.
100 years
It's
later,
because
those
they
same
sound like they're
people
drunk.
populated the southern hemisphere,
That's
went
great.
to New Zealand, went to Australia, went to South Africa. About 100 years after North America, the accent that they exported was different. England lost its R's
Advanced
after
mode? What the fuck
North
does that mean?
America was settled. So in Canada, we say horse and we say boar, and in England they say horse and bull.
Horse.
New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, they also are R-less,
Horse.
where North Americans are not. And it's because of something that happened in England in between the settlement dates of our two great areas.
We also covered concepts like
Assimilation, intrusion, elision. If you basically drink steam whistle every day, then you're just saying Toronto. Where you live in Toronto.
and we
Toronto.
looked into a range of a Canadian English accent.
More rural one.
That's true.
Is,
Toronto.
just when you kind of start talking like this, and that's where you get a bit more this kind of sense of like a lot of these guys just
Toronto.
kind of
Oh, I
open on their ears and turn like that. You're like, oh, geez, eh? And
Toronto.
those sort of Canadian isms that start to speak.
G, and I'm like smiling during the G.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Smiles. Kind of a G, oh, G, G's. It was interesting to me that Kevin had
This
these
is
phrases
funny.
that were like a tuning fork for
G,
accents.
G,
Ah,
G.
G's. I definitely needed to figure out my own tuning phrase. But that isn't the only reason why impersonations of Canadians so often have the same set of weird phrases. Canadian bacon, hams up Canadian for a reason.
The context in which
I
we
don't
often
care about
see
engagement,
accents
audience.
is things like comedy. The audience needs to know in 2 seconds that this guy's Canadian. So they make him come out with a hockey stick, and it's like, oh, hey, well, yours. That way we can immediately all go, oh my gosh, it's
12,
Canada, right?
Nuclear
Anyone who's ever seen
61.
their own accent
I
because
love this.
he's like, we're not just like that.
Kevin,
Not
that
enough to
gave me
shoot
homework.
that at this
If we
point.
pulled up like an interview of a hockey player or something like that, something where they're really giving you those Canadian sounds, then maybe we could like try and emulate that a little better and,
Wow.
and do
Okay.
that Canadiana.
What the
I
fuck
have
is this
written
dance
out
mode?
a few Canadianisms.
I think that's honestly a perfect way to approach.
I'm going to send these over to you. So, oh, geez, my bank charged me $10 just for having my money.
It's in there.
Okay.
Even the old G's, I'd almost make a bit more of an geez. Make a bit more of an sound. So I would say, geez, my bank
Okay.
charged me $10.
I'm about to go out to the government-owned liquor store. I'm about to go out to the supermarket. Geez, my bank charged me $10 just for having my money. My bank gave me $10 in interest. Then I uploaded the sentences for hundreds of English speakers to analyze. They
Okay.
would guess what country I came from and then transcribe the
New
phrase
Zealand?
so that I could see how much easier my new North American. But 26.7% of respondents still thought that I was Australian. And when I looked at a transcription test, the majority of people still misunderstood me when I was using my Canadian accent. Jeez. My bank charged me $10 just for having my money. I wasn't feeling great about this. All of this work and so many people were still misunderstanding me, and my friends were unimpressed by my efforts. Want to go for a rip down to the dot shop there, boys?
That is the most cliche. Nobody in Canada talks like that.
Geez. Then I noticed something in the data. When I was
Yes.
speaking with my natural accent, more people were transcribing correctly what I was saying. What? I suddenly remembered something that Jack had pointed out.
Your accent is in no sense broadly New Zealand. It's very much modified, I'm certain. New Zealanders famously among all English speakers do not have the high front vowel I. Instead of saying wish, New Zealanders say whoosh.
Really?
Yeah, okay, like fish. Is that the fish one?
Yeah,
Yeah, they say fish. Fish, right?
you figured that one out already, I think. It sounds like to me. I mean, I've been watching and waiting, but no, I don't hear it ever.
At the time, I just felt bad. Like an accent trophy fisherman, Jack had a whoosh to catch a fish, but I hadn't given it to him. However, he had noticed something that I didn't
Huh.
even know about myself.
I
Maybe
can see
after
that
10
face
years in
from
Canada, I
from
wasn't that
Griptown.
from the finish. I knew that I had subconsciously changed my vocabulary, but the change was deeper than that. Last month, I avoided a conflict with someone and instead was annoyed for 3 weeks.
A decade is a long time to be in a place and not get rid of like the most eccentric features that you brought with you.
When you laugh, it's like really sharp. Like,
But I realized something else from my interviews.
what about francophones?
Je suis pas sûr.
At least 1 in 5 Canadians are francophones.
The Quebecois Canadian French is a bit more like this.
And then there's something else.
I was 2 when I came over. My parents are from England.
My parents, they get by, as everyone does that speaks a second language.
They came from Germany and the Ukraine.
My parents, I hear no accent at all. Like friends of mine have a hard time understanding. I lived in Canada for 35 years.
Canada has always been an immigration powerhouse, with around 50% of
Like, that is-
Torontonians being
he says
foreign-born.
words,
When you add
like
it all
Scottish
together,
words,
a massive
Scottish
number of
accent.
Canadians have accents that are different from standard Canadian English. It's just the accents aren't that regional. Because the accent may be your parents' accent, or your buddy's accent, or the accent of someone that you love. Because this is Canada, and some Canadians speak like this.
After having gone through this whole journey of, trying to give yourself this mystical Canadian accent, you've sort of discovered that, to some extent, nobody cares.
Before I moved
Yeah,
to Canada, I was told
though.
that Canadians were nice.
Nope. We just don't count it. Oh, there are the cars. The street racers. Are fucking hardcore. Like, a lot of them are, like, young. Like, kid 20 years old. I met some at the fucking iCar place in Maribel.
Do you have sensitive teeth and bleeding gums? New Sensodyne Sensitivity and Gum.
Calcium. I'd like to do a water test on my own water because I noticed that the place that used to do the tours, Amphibi something, that Allison told me to go, she did the tour. So I was like, what is that thing? It was for a boat tour, but that place, they sold it. So they built this giant fucking, it says Atwater Usin or something, which means company, Atwater Company. And it looks like they put up something to cover. Like, it's like this giant glass building that you put up like 3 years ago. Maybe 4 years ago, actually. And it looks like boards, almost. I was like, that's interesting, because I wanted to go skating there. This is all just like so happens to be. Like, it's a fucking accident, really. Okay, go to town.
Non. Non posterior. Ok. Tu vis ça, c'est quelle ville? Ça, c'est quelle ville? Tu connais un peu la voie de vendre les cobalt. Tu sais, on fait quoi?
Oh my god, I've never seen fucking word Canada so much in
Tu ne
news.
connais pas confie avec cobalt. Tu ne connais pas. Did you comprar bien mi comadre?
Five days ago. And I love this one according to Jesse McGuire.
Welcome to On Contact. Today we discuss J. Robert Oppenheimer and the making of the bomb with author Cairo.
And there was this notion, Oppenheimer himself sort of bought into this argument. It's a rationale, really, that, well, if we demonstrate the power of this weapon, it will make it impossible for societies in the future to conduct industrial warfare because it would be suicide. And of course, this is the argument in 1945, in the spring of 45, when his own physicists realized, as you were mentioning, that the bomb was not going to be built in time to be used on Germany and German fascism. And that if Japan was the target, the Japanese certainly didn't have the capability of building this bomb. They knew they were right behind. What is the ethics then of trying to use this bomb on Japanese cities? And Oppenheimer made
fucking put it on the radio. They fucking had control of the radio, so they fucking people hear what they want to hear.
What is possible?
Take the development of the hydrogen bomb.
It is with profound sadness I must share with you directly that our beloved Rush, my wonderful husband,
News broadcast this hour out of RT America, National News headquarters here in Washington, D.C. We are preparing to go live to President Joe Biden making remarks on the tense situation about eastern Ukraine right now. But I'd also like to introduce our panel that is in studio here with us. First, we have RT senior writer Navoy.
We'll obviously talk about outside invasion from Moscow. There seems to be increasing conflict happening within Ukraine between Kyiv and the disputed areas, Donbass region. So it's localized, and I doubt that Moscow would go on in that case unless Russian citizens are killed. And you're having there's an evacuation underway right now, and I think that we need to be able to see that and hear from international observers on just where those who started this latest foray of artillery exchanges, because something doesn't compute with that school, for example, in Ukraine in terms of the trajectory. It just something's not right. And what I'm concerned about is that while the United States has built up this notion of a false flag from Russia,
Russia, using that word for a week now,
that this gives Kyiv cover to do false flag, so that it automatically reverts back to Moscow and not to Kyiv.
The problem with the observers is that by the latest reports from our correspondent on the ground, the observers are parked in their dwellings and not actually in the field. So we don't really know what's going on out on the field, because the OSCE people have, according to our reports, again, I've seen this morning, they're not actually in the field. They're cowering in their bases, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I agree with Michael that what's troubling here is that traditionally, in military terms, an invasion is preceded by a bombardment of some kind, an artillery or an air barrage. What we've been seeing here for months is a media barrage.
Yes.
And because modern warfare, 21st century warfare, is first and foremost media warfare, long before it turns kinetic. Yeah, we have a situation in which basically the entire population of the planet is being primed by these corporate and state media outlets to believe a certain narrative. And if and when, God forbid, they'll already be predisposed to believe going on rather what they've been told is going on rather than what's actually going on.
Right. Unlike the other media
Shit,
outlets that
really?
do not actually have people on the ground in these disputed regions, we do have our own guy on the ground, Roman Kosarev. He's there in Donetsk. He filed this report.
People are lining up at various evacuation points to go to a safe place in Russia. But before I get to that, I wanted to talk about where I am right now. I'm next to a city administration building in Donetsk where a terrorist act, or local administration is calling it, had occurred at around 7:15 p.m. This Friday. I was actually about a couple of hundred meters away from where this took place. If you can see behind me, there is a vehicle where an explosive device detonated. The vehicle belonged to the chief of the People's Militia of the self-proclaimed Donetsk Republic. There were no victims as the car was empty at the time. And right now, the Army engineers had already concluded their work here, and they haven't found any more explosive devices. But the sound from the blast was heard throughout the city. And you can probably tell the power of this explosion because the vehicle is completely destroyed. Earlier, Army engineers were working here with bomb-sniffing dogs, but thankfully nothing was found. Mind you, the building where the administration of the city of Donetsk is located is right in the center of the city, and it is Friday night, and this area is usually frequented by a lot of local residents who come out here on a Friday night to enjoy their time. Thankfully, there were no people around here at that time, and there were no victims, well, apart from this car. Now, earlier, indeed, the head of the Donetsk People's Republic announced the evacuation of women, children, and the elderly. He said that President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, is all but ready to give an order to the troops that are amassed along the conflict line to go on an offensive. And he said in order to prevent the loss of life, people should be evacuated to Russia, to the nearest neighboring region of Rostov, with whom he had already made arrangements where shelter and food and all the necessities will be provided.
All right, I'm Manila Chance here with Mike Maloof and Neboisha Malich. We are awaiting President Biden's remarks on the tense situation in Ukraine. We just saw there Roman Kosarev's report from on the ground in Donetsk. But to counter his story, there are reports about this kindergarten classroom being shelled or bombed, and there are a lot of disputed stories around that as well. I think, Neb, you've got some insight on that.
I mean, I've seen photos and I've seen video from inside, and I have some firsthand experience of being bombed and being in areas that were bombed from back in Bosnia 30 years ago. And let me tell you, when a bomb or tank shell or mortar or any kind of shell hits a building, there's no window intact in that building.
Yeah.
That just does not happen. And the photos of the kindergarten we saw showed windows intact. So that's my first red flag. I don't necessarily know the details of the investigation, but from what I've seen, those windows should not be intact, and they weren't. The footballs inside that were neatly stacked on the shelf were neatly stacked on the shelf. Something's wrong with this picture. I don't know what it is, but something is wrong.
Mike, you might know a thing or two about Warzone.
Yeah, trajectory.
Fucking Jay.
It was straight. The hole was straight. If you have a bomb coming in or an artillery shell, it comes in at an angle, and it obliterates what's ever there. This was still intact, as Neb says, and which indicates that it had to be done locally, and that's
right.
what
Something came from a great distance. Nothing would be standing.
That is correct, and so that this sort of indicates that this could have come in from a shorter direction, from a shorter distance, and it came in straight. It didn't come in as a trajectory.
We should also note that no kindergartners and
and the kids were conveniently
not in class.
But it was the middle of the day.
Right.
So something is
amiss.
Amiss,
to say the least. I've seen plenty of events in Bosnia, again, lived through stuff firsthand that were very much exploited by the media as oh, look what they're doing to us, please help, intervene, bomb, sanction, etc.
The key words like genocide happening.
And
of course,
again, it's as I've said before, 21st century warfare is maybe 80+% propaganda and the rest kinetic. So
this is why I think there can be a black flag from the Kyiv side. And
you think this was a false flag event?
I think this was a false flag event in reverse.
See, like and shit. Even leave the windows just cracked. Now all you hear is fucking cars fucking like, and I'm like, oh, like I literally drive from one end of Montreal to the other almost on a daily. There's no cops anywhere. They're mostly like on the outskirts of residential areas because now the cops are having big Montreal cops, or the SPM, are apparently not policing West Island, or like they want to start being like an oversight of the West Island police. So each borough has its own police, almost like its own police station, but like they want to each be like their own police force.
Ukraine was one of the states that emerged from the ruins of the superpower.
А в 90-м году, 91-м году украинскому народу обещали красивую жизнь, самостоятельность, независимость, и людей опять обманули. Но те люди, которые голосовали за независимость Украины, они добились независимости. То есть политически было принято решение. А вот дальше, как говорится, развиваться в стране, они уже приняли.
What have the past 3 decades been like for Ukraine? Eyewitnesses recall the events.
Те, що відбувалося в 2004 року і в ранню зиму, це навіть це почало приобретати форму цвітної революції.
And what other forces were at play?
Я тоді зрозумів, що всі інші наші іноземні радники говорять, а американці роблять. Мені здається, що Захід не може завершити жодної справи.
Take a look at Ukraine. 30 years after gaining independence.
Итог развития страны за 30 лет – потеря промышленности, потеря населения, потеря территории.
Можливо, ми провели 30 найцікавіших років нашого становлення.
Dude, you should see the fucking, and they're down, like, fucking groups doing traditional dancing, like it's crazy, like, all the people that like, were stuck in their homes that were fucking, it's like a desolate wasteland, and they like, fucking painted everything, fucking, and everyone's like, oh, it's a show, it's all the snacks, there's a show, so it's actually happening.
Et quand j'ai dit au début, c'est que j'ai pas de 2002 à 2007, 8, 9, cette période-là, c'était plus les entreprises européennes. Mais après, on a vu ces changements. Les entreprises européennes ont vendu leurs actions aux entreprises chinoises. Donc aujourd'hui, c'est le marché qui domine. Et il y a plus d'entreprises chinoises qui produisent ici au Congo.
Bon, nous, si on travaille, par exemple, par jour, j'ai fait, par exemple, 5 sacs.
For example,
5 sacs là, je les stocke. Demain aussi, je travaille 5 sacs. Il y a ceux-là qui travaillent même 6, 7, 8 par jour.
Sasa tutapiwa kibambazi pale, tuanze bomola kwa kipande mbele.
Hivyo raki kwa
Leta toshi comme ça, angalie nipatia toshi nani hivi. Leta ndani toshi, leta toshi mtumishi. Talenda, bwana sasa unaiwezaka. Bwana.
Oh my god.
Combien de sacs vous pouvez faire par jour, ça dépend. Combien? C'est à chaque fois que vous faites à peu près, vous arrivez à combien de sacs?
Souvent 1500, 1300.
Après, c'est comment ça se passe? Expliquez bien. Et non par jour, vous faites comment?
What did your typical day look like? Each day you come in, if the men actors are foreign.
Il y a celui qui est chargé comme chef d'équipe. C'est lui qui est comme le chef spécialisé. Donc, chacun de nous, son nom se trouve sur ces cahiers-là. Il appelle l'un appelle, et puis il descend sur ces puits-là. Après avoir descendu, et puis il commence à évacuer des produits qui se trouvent sous les puits. Donc, quand on évacue ça, on compte directement un colis jusqu'à quel point vous allez arriver à 1000 ou à 1500. Et puis, on va vous payer par colis.
Quand on vend on les casse pour que ça soit petit.
On les casse pour savoir
Donc, ça, c'est sous-estimation. Donc, on estime et puis ça se passe comme ça. C'est parce que nous avons des négociants. Les négociants qui achètent ici, ils amènent ça dans les usines. Et du côté cobalt, ça se passe sur terre. Donc, on échantillonne et puis on prend les poudres. On examine ça, on prend la terre et puis on s'achète sur terre.
Si tu as trouvé, par exemple, 6%, tu es dans les bons. Si tu as trouvé 7%, là, tu es dans l'espère. Si moi, j'ai vendu ton 500, je gagne tout 1 million, 1 million 100. Mais ceux-là qui travaillent bien, ils dépassent. D'autres journées, je peux travailler pour une semaine, tu trouves 3 tonnes et tu touches 600 000.
That's not like a you problem.
Et on travaille, mais jusqu'à là, on ne travaille pas.
And now we can't
Parce
work. Why?
qu'il
Because
dit que
country says
cette
they own the
rivière
river.
nous appartient.
Is it French? French people?
Accéder pour le moment, on ne peut pas
They
accéder.
like
Il
to
faut
own
aller
fucking
chercher
lakes.
d'autres carrières pour accéder. Alors, c'est cette rivière qui donne des conflits entre Kaiser et l'entreprise Métalcom. C'est cette rivière ici. Bon, il y a maintenant des semaines qu'on ne travaille pas. On est par
I've
terre.
been sitting at home for at least 2 weeks
On est à
now.
la maison. On est assis à la maison.
I love
Ça
this
fait
food
au moins des
story.
semaines que nous sommes en chômage.
We're unemployed.
La fête, toujours été interdit aux
In
pharmaciens,
fact,
c'est vrai.
mine are not.
Mais vu que la population, il y a des gens qui se recherchent.
But sometimes
Il y a beaucoup de
those
jeunes
teachers'
filles
jobs
qui
because
tombent
of their
enceintes
living
précocement
conditions.
et qui ne savent pas
Fucking less girls were, oh my god, they're often pregnant. Some of their husbands leave, so they work to their families.
femmes-là qui entrent en police dans les mines. Et là, parfois, là, on va voir des fois en train de faire, il y a...
Okay, they work the minerals, for example, they wash them.
Des crésés, hein.
Other jobs apart from actual mining.
Pour les grossesses qui ne sont pas à terme, donc
Preterm pregnancies. They use birth to premature children.
Et pour les grossesses qui sont encore
Early stage
vraiment
pregnancy.
pas
It isn't developed yet. You'll see malformation. Maybe it's still an embryo. Let's see, or as a child develops. Like a missing arm or a deformed head. Those look like kids actually. Canadian police fire pepper spray. That's the bottom.
John, unaweza charger. Basho muito ni mobile bana unaweza charger. Sasa ikiwa taxi mbele wana mtu mobile kwa pale. E kwa tukeni kwa PTV. Là itapita kapita na moto kwa hivyo sino.
Use bikes to deliver it.
Ça peut créer des problèmes.
This could cause problems.
La carrière train c'est cas du
Kit removes the word it's been there 22 years.
2 ans.
At first, local men discovered the quarry here. Great. And men took it over and then goes to shit. Great. Miners came afterward. At first, we worked together with the women. But when we came, we got women to leave. Only men work here. How many people do you employ? You know, you back in my face because it's always dangerous. Okay. 20,000. What? 20,000 workers? What? If they fall ill, the pays for them for their treatment. And speaking of social care, for mental health, the children of the miners who get swept away in landslides and die. So orphan children, it's the cooperative that provides for them. What the fuck is those fucking lame things going to? You don't do your $5 for your work in the kit, but you only get $2.50. What do you do? Miners often swindle us over the money.
On lui demande l'argent de nous payer.
They say, wait, we'll pay you later. Okay, never comes. Well, you guys are not the only ones. Nothing, I just get sad. You don't go to them again? No. Why not? You think when mom and dad are with you, you miss your parents. Of course I do.
L'homme qui suit, il s'agit de dire que quand je fais quoi? Je le téléphone. Donc l'état là, que quand j'entends la voix de ma mère, je me rappelle toujours de ma mère et de mes petits frères. Et ça te donne envie de pleurer aussi? Oui. Tu pleures aussi? Non, mais j'ai la tendance de pleurer, mais mes larmes ne sortent jamais. Donc, quand je suis triste, c'est à propos dans les façons de vivre. Donc, il y a des fois que je dois, avant que je sois chez mon grand frère ici, j'avais aussi, avant que je sois chez mon grand frère ici, j'avais aussi l'un de notre famille. Donc, j'ai resté chez nous. En manquant de moyens, on ne reste plus à l'aise. Ce sont des schémas qui décrits dans la maison, chaque fois du désordre. Donc, c'est ça pourquoi j'étais triste.
Might as well put it and hammer it for 2 solid days. Oh my god. I wish it made some money though. No matter the price we were, the price stays the same.
T'as expliqué
expliquer que quand on voit
When you talk
chez les Chinois,
about
les
the
restes, on ne
Chinese,
sait pas.
do you know what
Où on
happens
amène les
next? Where do they take it?
J'ai une question, c'est quoi
They come to
c'est quoi là? Nous, on les fait ces masses
or
sortir
out of the
dans
mind.
quoi? Dans les
They are
et
our
puis
owners,
il y a
and
les
we are the
propriétaires.
miners. Oh, we are mere
Nous, on
miners.
fait seulement
We wash the ore, we take it
on met
out.
des salisères. Donc, quand on les fait sortir, et puis les créiseurs aussi,
There's a digger here too,
l'amènent
and they make
directement
that
dans
land.
des dépôts, et puis ils vendent
And the
ça.
Chinese
Et
take
les
it to the
Chinois
plant.
aussi amènent ça dans des usines. Par exemple, les autres, je ne sais
I
pas
don't
moi,
know what they do
où est-ce
with it after
qu'ils
that.
les mettent.
We make smartphones.
Toi, tu connais, après avoir vendu les commodités, on fait quoi avec? Tu ne connais pas qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec
You don't know what they do with the cobalt? You don't know what it is.
On ne sait pas. C'est la mort maintenant.
I don't know.
Quand
I'll
on fait
die.
la carrière,
If
c'est
it
la mort.
closes, it'll be dead.
Où je vais chercher à
How much do they
manger?
pay for food?
Mon mari n'a
My
pas de
husband hasn't a
travail.
job.
Je vais chercher
Where
à
will I get
manger.
food?
J'irai où
Where
maintenant?
will I go?
Au village aussi, c'est grave.
Life in the village is hard. I wouldn't be able to stay here.
On va tuer des gens.
I can only wonder
Quand
what
ferme
I
la
would do
carrière,
if the pit
c'est
closed.
difficile.
That's tough.
À la carrière, c'est là où les
In
gens
the
se
pit,
retrouvent.
we all get to know each other.
Jusqu'à quand mon Dieu, ces
Just
paroles se fera chair à moi. Alléluia. Jusqu'à quand, Seigneur, ces paroles se fera chair à moi.
Perfect. Today, numbers of children involved in cobalt mining has dropped, but it's still possible there are mobile phone camera and blah blah blah. Oh yeah, so I was right. All that fucking cobalt that makes phones and computers and all that shit, all our tech stuff that I can't even fucking use an old Samsung phone because I have to buy one from Fido.
Life simply looks different when we look through the spiritually aware brain. We're absolutely far more able to bounce back from difficulty, and difficulties are seen as invitations to move away from the stuck red doors in our lives, open our eyes and say, what life, what spirit that guides are you showing me now? This is completely within our birthright. In fact, we function better. I think looking at the preponderance of the evidence, I conclude that we are made whole and as we are designed to be when we strengthen the spiritual core and bring that into all realms of our life.
So what we've got to do is identify the threats that we have.
It's crazy.
Confrontation led an arms race.
This often is very dramatic development.
I personally am going to resist. I don't see how that strategy will be successful.
Very critical time. Time to sit down and talk.
These people are done talking at this point.
Sunday morning's headlines from RT, sleepless nights and touching goodbyes. Non-stop shelling in Ukraine's breakaway Donbass republics keeps locals at bay. Many are taking up arms, while others say they're forced to flee, suspecting an attack by Kiev's military.
Do you know how heads get blown off before parents' eyes? No? And we know how parents hid their 3 children in a bathroom and they all got blown there. You don't know this.
Escaping the violence out of fear for their lives, tens of thousands across the border seeking safety in Russia, where the government is providing accommodation for the evacuees.
I think that's why you're going to keep seeing these protests pop up. These people are terrified.
Mhm.
They have nothing to lose at this point.
Desperate yet defiant protesters are pushed back by police in Ottawa as the Canadian government seeks to stamp out weeks-long. Sunday the 20th of February This is RT International. We're keeping you up to speed on the weekend's developments around the world. First, then, a sleepless night in Ukraine's breakaway Donbass republics as artillery shelling pounded on both sides of the front line between Kiev's military and the local defense forces. Tens of thousands of evacuees have crossed the border into Russia to escape the escalating conflict. Let's take you live now to Ukraine's breakaway Donetsk Republic. Our senior correspondent Murad Gazdiev is there. Murad, hi. Can you just talk us through what kind of night it's been? Is the shelling still ongoing?
Well, it was an incredibly violent night, going by any measure. Just a few months ago, you could go days without hearing an explosion or an outgoing artillery shot. Now it's just hours. It isn't as bad as it was in 2015, 2016, when they were still trying to establish a ceasefire here, when it was seconds between explosions all day, all night. At this point, the last we heard was at 6:30, just an hour and a half ago. A slew of explosions just south of us, towards the area where the Donetsk airport is, where the front lines are, and where things are very hectic indeed. We had the OSCE yesterday come out and say, tell people that they've registered 1,600 violations, which is an extraordinary amount, considering that in previous days they've registered 100, 200 or so violations. But nevertheless, this activity has been heard and seen all over the front line here in eastern Ukraine, along the periphery of where the belligerents are, the Ukrainian military and the breakaway provinces of Diana and Elena. In fact, our correspondent, my colleague and friend from our Arabic channel, they came under fire yesterday while trying to film the results of shelling in Zaitsevo, also located here in eastern Ukraine.
Как только приблизились к нашему дому, здесь начался обстрел, стреляют. Вот близко очень. Нам приходится пока здесь сидеть, так как обстрел со стороны украинской армии усиливается, продолжается. Вот, спрятались за стеной. Слышите выстрелы. Нам пока приходится вот так сидеть.
It is worth, of course, mentioning that violations have been registered on both sides of the conflict line. So both sides, according to the OSCE, are shooting. This includes artillery, 80mm, 120mm artillery. So certainly both violations are being registered on both sides. But it is also worth mentioning that on this side of the front lines, in the breakaway republics, we're in a city, Donetsk, of 2 million people. So any shot that lands here, any explosion here, causes that much more terror.
Murad, have you had a chance since you arrived to talk to many of the locals? What are they telling you? Do many of them plan to get out of there?
Look, well, locals are very divided. There are those who, of course, are using this opportunity to get out. Many of them, thousands upon thousands, are already in Russia's Rostov region, for example, and some of them have explained that they've told us that they have lost loved ones. They don't want to go through this again, through what they went in previous years.
It was very scary. The shells were flying. I'm scared for my grandchildren and my children. We were told that we had to leave very quickly. My husband, son and daughter all stayed. Everyone has their own household to look after, their own job to go to. This situation started back in 2014. Then, my son became disabled, my daughter-in-law died, and one-year-old grandson received a head injury. Of course, we are now very, very afraid.
This evacuation is ongoing. More and more people are deciding to leave to wait out this latest escalation, of course, hoping for the best. Nevertheless, there are many people who, if not the majority, who have elected to stay. This evacuation, their priority is for women, children, the elderly, men of service age, so that's 18 to 55. I've been about this mobilization underway. People are joining the defense of DNA.
I'll make fun of myself after.
To break away provinces. We have seen teary-eyed goodbyes with wives and families saying goodbye to their husbands,
an extra hamburger.
As they join the fight here in eastern Ukraine, the defense of their city. Many people describe this as another patriotic war. Nevertheless, we have also seen huge lines. When we were driving in to the Donetsk, we saw huge lines of cars with authorities and local law enforcement searching the cars, turning around any men that they'd found. There's a lot of hope, especially among the civilian population, that there will be a resolution found, diplomatic dialogue that will de-escalate things here. But as things stand now, again, 6:30 in the morning, we had explosions not far from the city centre. It's towards the area of the airport, but more explosions there.
Okay, it's been a rapidly changing situation over the past 48 hours. We'll check in with you later, Murad. For now, thanks for joining us in Donetsk. That evacuation Murad was referring to there, so 2 days into that rescue operation from the breakaway Donbass republics to neighbouring Russia, RT's Donald Corter is at one of the locations accommodating them.
The Russian region of Rostov is under a state of emergency. The authorities have set up zones all over the region to accommodate the expected 700,000 evacuees coming from the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. And one of the things that the region's governor asked was for the owners of hotels in the region to help out.
I don't know anyone who has sickle cell anemia. Plus, nobody talks about it.
It was awesome, man. Like, it's a little bit surprising. Little people like you and me, like mostly like you guys, taking care of CBC thing, you know.
So Jagmeet Singh is propping up Justin Trudeau, who is violating civil liberties in a way never seen in Canada before. So much so that the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, which has been hibernating for 2 years, finally woke up.
Yeah, I know. We like that last one. Yeah,
By promotion, promising legal immunity from his misconduct. I mean, many of the good cops have left the force, either being fired or removed themselves for not going along with the past 2 years of bullying. So the new chief will follow orders. He'll do whatever he needs to do, like canceling Parliament.
What?
I say the police raids today did not wait until Parliament was done debating. They just canceled Parliament. The police told Parliament not to meet. It's not needed. I mean, the decision-making is being done by the police now. Parliament really is just a hood ornament. The police canceled Parliament. Last night they started arresting trucker leaders, in this case, Tamara Litch, the young Métis woman who got the convoy going in the first place.
She was native.
So peaceful protest leaders just arrested on the streets, swooped up, picked up the police cars.
and told to scram. And then this morning, the Ottawa police, just assuming their role as the unchecked dictators of Canada, no peaceful protesters allowed at all. They were just arrest you on sight. Oh, and no journalists, thank you. I mean, it's best if you just trust the police to tell you about the police. After all, if you don't need Parliament and you don't need protesters, why do you need journalists? Here's the police threatening our people.
Oh my god.
Keep the peace! Keep the peace!
Guys, I gotta get out of here. Thank you, bro.
You can tell who's aggressive, who's the one that's
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. This guy just pulled me out of there. Thank you. CDTV.FTL on Instagram. I love this dude. Thank you, man. Doing the damn work for all of us. Thanks for looking out for me. I love you, brother.
So like I said yesterday, Trudeau's hatchet man is the dirtiest cop in Canada. My story today was going to be a premonition about what Bill Blair would do, but it happened before I could finish telling the story. I'll just give you just a little taste of it. It made international news, Bill Blair. Let me read a bit. Toronto police pay $16.5 million to protesters wrongfully held at 2010 G20 summit. This article is a few years old. Let me read it to you. Claimants to receive up to $24,700 in historic settlement. Police encircled 1,100 people and carried out mass arrests. Well, that sounds familiar. Let me read some of it. About 1,100 protesters who were wrongfully detained at the 2010 G20 summit in Toronto will receive compensation from the city's police force after a historic $16.5 million settlement in a class action lawsuit. Under the settlement, which was announced late on Monday, each claimant will receive between $5,000 and $24,700, depending on the nature of their detention. They will also have their G20 protest-related records expunged. Thousands of protesters traveled to downtown Toronto to protest against the convening of the G20 summit. The causes were numerous: anti-globalization, anti-poverty, pro-environment, pro-gay rights, and the protests leading up to the Jan 26-27 June summit were peaceful. Okay, now can you spot the difference? Here it is. During the summit, however, police cars were set on fire, and a small band of masked protesters incited vandalism and violence. In 3 weeks of peaceful protests in Ottawa, there has not been a single police car set on fire, has there? No violence at all, has there? Of course not. But the police responded by encircling more than 1,000 people, including peaceful protesters, onlookers, and journalists at various locations, and carried out mass arrests. At one point, hundreds were kettled in a torrential downpour and left to shiver in the cold. Video footage at the time also showed officers using excessive force, tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets against protesters at the makeshift detention center. Detainees were strip searched. In 2014, Vice reported that the police trained surveillance cameras on the strip search rooms. Ottawa court judges later found the police's actions contravened the protesters' civil rights, specifically their charter rights to expression and peaceful assembly. So humiliating people by strip searching them and filming it. How could a police chief who did that ever have a job again? Well, precisely because he did that. Because a tyrant can count on such a man to do whatever needs to be done to crush Trudeau's opponents without any compunction, without any regard to the law. One of the convoy leaders, Ben Dictor, he said, breaking Ottawa police are boxing in protesters and executing mass arrests, once again escalating the situation to leave in peace. Why are you always escalating? Of course they are. They're going from truck to truck with heavy weapons, training violence on men, women, and children, threatening them with guns, and the media are pushed back, and really it's straight out of a police state. These are technically police forces, but they have military-style uniforms, military-style weapons, armored vehicles, and what Trudeau would call assault rifles. By the way, that's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You've got to go to rebelnews.com. So they've cut this main battery cable. They cut this negative battery cable almost all the way through. They cut the cables on the solenoids. It'll be start solenoids and probably a loop-like solenoid. And then this control box, they've cut all the wires in it.
The fuel line's off. They sprayed foamed them shut. Yeah. There's a filter missing over there. And they've cut all the wires off the solenoids there.
Yeah. Hey there.
It's Joyce, I'm calling you back.
Yeah, thank you.
So I can confirm that we disabled looks like three excavators.
Yep.
Oh my god.
To prevent the equipment from being used in the illegal activity of the blockade.
Is there an expectation there as to how they were going to be used?
I'm not sure. I have the answer for you. I'm not sure what other question you might have with relative to that. I wasn't part of that, the planning or the execution of that. So I don't think I can comment any further than that.
So, Sid, you spent, I believe, a total of 2 weeks embedded with the convoy in Coutts, Alberta. Meanwhile, the mainstream media types with the CBC, they were embedded with law enforcement. But I think one of the most egregious stories to come out of that was what the RCMP did to those excavators, as your video shows, and as they confirmed. They went onto private property, went over to privately owned equipment that was doing nothing except occupying land, and they vandalized it. Probably the vandalism is over $100,000 in terms of parts and labor. Sid, what the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, I have no idea. Although I guess the closest thing I would think is that it was done out of spite. They were kind of at every corner running out of options. They didn't know how to deal with the protesters because for the entirety of the time that I was there, it retained its peaceful nature, which is why they couldn't just bring down the hammer. But they were certainly at every corner being turned around basically by the protesters in Coutts, leaving them with, I think, they felt perhaps like little options. And for some reason, that was one of the options they thought they would go forward with.
Yeah, I'm sorry, though, Sid, even if they are spiteful, if you are wearing a badge and carrying around a firearm, you're supposed to overcome those emotions. You're not supposed to lash out. You're not supposed to break the law. Sort of something lifted from Minority Report, the Tom Cruise film from 2002, in which they have a pre-crimes unit. So they rely on information and intelligence from psychics about somebody who might be breaking the law in the future, and they arrest him and convict him based on that evidence. I think maybe they thought they were going to roll in those excavators. So the RCMP pre-crimes unit came in. It's funny, that movie was set in 2054. I think they were just off by 3 decades. It happened right in Alberta in 2022. Your thoughts?
Well, the corporal who I spoke with, he didn't have a reason when I asked him.
Quite.
Oh, no, I think City News, what the? Like they just fucking apparently just fired all the reporters. What the hell? Yes.
One person is responsible for this mess, and that's the Prime Minister. He caused this mess by attacking Canadian citizens and their freedoms. The rest of the world is moving on. Other countries all around the world are lifting restrictions. Provinces across the country are doing exactly the same, but we've got this holdup. The Prime Minister is hunkering down, and out of spite and personal pride, refusing to these unjustified and unscientific restrictions. If he would only do so, then the truckers could get back to work and the other protesters could go back to their lives and everything in Canada would get back up on its feet and we could get back to working on giving people control of their lives.
cat is Caesar's, or dog is Caesar's, cat's got a calf, and I'm looking in Pete's pocket. I'm like, essentially it's all the same, right? Okay. Why did you turn on? Okay. Can you read your food? Oh. John? Okay. Uh-oh.
So, there's the line. Alright, I'm going to do it a little slower so you don't have a seizure. One, it offers them all up there. And I guess I missed some of the statues over here. Because there's a Santa where he fought. Our soldiers, that's the monument for freedom. Our soldiers fought and died for our freedoms. And this is not freedom. This, I don't know what this is. I don't know what country I'm in anymore. What country am I in now?
Right? How I feel every day too.
Hi everyone, it's Dr. Romney, and today we're going to talk about why a relationship with a narcissist is so time-consuming. As always, I'm going to make my request and hit the bell. We're launching yet another very, very groundbreaking series that will clarify everything you need to know, and you'll always be told about lies, all the other things that we do. So let's go back to the original question.
It's fucking long ambulances. Always hear and see ambulances, but cops not so much no more. Oh my god. Oh my god. Awesome. Well, shit. Fucking. It's not like a 10-course meal. I can't just give you all the options every time. Sorry. This is why again. I have to fucking milk.
With your plan of attack of the government being focused on the pandemic from the beginning, because you have said many controversial things about
hopefully the pandemic will be behind us within a very near future, but we're gonna have all the impacts of the pandemic within the next few months, and that's going to lead us to the next election. Our healthcare system is not in good shape. Our healthcare system let us down during the crisis. I think it's time to fix it. We need a much more efficient healthcare system in Quebec. We need to addition the contribution of the private sector as well and have more freedom of choice for patients, decentralize the system. I think that will be part of the debate. The pandemic is also going to leave us with a huge deficit and debt. The equity between generations is for me one of the most important issues. And so I think we will be the only party that will be here to say that we need to respect la loi sur l'équilibre budgétaire. And for me, it is very important. Unfortunately, the four parties are ready to throw it away, and we will defend that example. But we will talk about the consequences of the pandemic. We are the party who represents and who is speaking on behalf of those who suffer tremendously of the measures that have been put in place for the last 15 months.
What we're announcing today is that starting June 11th, whatever the zone you're in, there's going to be a wider number of athletes that can participate in organized activities. So starting June 11th in the red zone, you're going to be having 25 participants with no contact, but so we can have a fair practice of soccer, respecting, of course, the measures, and it's going forward. And in the yellow zone, you can have 25 participants with brief contacts, and in the green zone, you can have actually 50 participants, and you can also have tournaments and games and competitions. And then June 25th, you can have outdoor events, like mass outdoor events, respecting, of course, the measures that are in place and were announced last week. Yeah, that's the big part of the announcement. But we also reminded that we're leading towards moving from one zone to another, so we should be expecting in mid-June to have most of the region in yellow zone, and by the end of June to have most of the region in green zone.
Yeah, just one thing to make sure it's perfectly clear. So the limit that's being increased to 25 for supervised activities in all zones applies only to outdoor activities. I just wanted to make sure that it's perfectly clear.
Good evening, everyone. Good news. We're exceeding our goals with the vaccination campaign. Quebecers of all generations are fulfilling their duty. Thanks to your efforts, we can now announce a reopening plan. On Monday, students in regions with emergency measures will return to school. By May 31, our goal is for a majority of regions to turn orange. By June 14, our goal is for a majority of regions to turn yellow, and by June 28, our goal is for a majority of regions to turn green. Now, starting Friday next week, May 28, in all regions, the curfew will be lifted, restaurant terraces will reopen, gatherings of 8 people will be allowed in private yards, travel between regions will be authorized, and theaters and stadium bar terraces will also reopen. Starting June 25, people who have received 2 doses of vaccine will be able to see each other in homes without mask and without distancing. Summer camps will be authorized for up to 2,500 people without sections. By the end of August, if we reach our goal of 75% of the population over 12 with 2 doses, masks won't be mandatory in most public places. And CEGEPs and universities will reopen in person. Continue to follow the rules and please get vaccinated with the first and second dose. Thank you.
Hi. Food?
You got this, Dad. Always growing. What we learn from play, we learn for life.
Thanks to all your efforts, the situation continues to improve in Quebec. I'm announcing that Montreal and Laval will turn orange on June 7th.
Montreal and
Same
Laval.
goes for the MRC that were in red zones in Chaudière-Appalaches, Estrie, and Bas-Saint-Laurent. Also on June 7th, Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Mauricie, and Centre du Québec will turn yellow. The same goes for the MRC of Métis, Rimouski, and Matane in eastern Bas-Saint-Laurent. Also on June 7th, Abitibi, Témiscamingue, Côte-Nord, and Nord du Québec will turn green, but we have to stay very careful with indoors gatherings. We need to keep our distances and wear the mask until we have our 2 doses. So with just 1 dose, there's a risk for virulence. We have to progress gradually. On Thursday, Christian will announce the calendar for those who want to receive their 2nd dose earlier. And I want to ask young people to get their 1st dose as soon as possible. We need you to get back to our normal life. The more we are with 2 doses of vaccine, the sooner we can restart our little parties.
My net worth. But the coronavirus.
Get off my screen.
But your plan of attack.
Are you serious? Montreal Gazette has nothing. Montreal Hockey Inside Out and live stream test 7 years ago.
C'est la même personne. Le directeur territorial, c'est la même.
What the fuck?
Oui.
Donc là, vous nous dites que, outre donc c'est la même personne qui vous donnait les renseignements sur la planification.
Oui.
That's not right. Something's not fucking right. Wait, hang on. Can you eat your food?
But will your plan of attack of the government be focused on the pandemic from the beginning? Because you have said many controversial things about COVID.
Hopefully the pandemic will be behind us within a very near future, but we're gonna
I wanted to ask about the 2nd dose as well.
This is from May 2021.
Just maybe, I know that I'm making you repeat what you said in French, but you say there will be enough AstraZeneca doses for those who would like to get their 2nd dose.
Yeah, that's from 8 months ago, that's why. Fucking show me shit only from like 10 years ago. I'm like, great, thanks. What's this potential? Border protest, a potential recruitment zone for extremists, but I thought everything was cleared up. That was from a day ago. 2 days ago.
Asking questions. I just want to make sure we want to be disciplined in how we ask our questions so that everybody gets an opportunity, of course, to do that. But before we do that, we have a point of order from the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know in the province of Ontario, in the workplace, you're mandated to wear a mask. When I look across, 20% of the Conservative caucus is not wearing a mask. And I would look to the member from Carleton as an environment, whether or not we should be wearing masks.
Good question. Remember? And I just want to say that the Speaker did have a response to this yesterday, and in a point of order as well. Tried to clarify the DIOE had made a decision that it is strongly recommended. it is not required. I guess depends on where you draw that line of strongly recommended. So I will strongly recommend it to members of the House to keep their mask on when they're not speaking. Question commentaire, the honourable member for Carleton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I took my mask off to speak. I note the member had his mask off while he was very quickly condemning others for not wearing a mask. The irony. So, Mr. Speaker, this minister wants us to trust his government to regulate. Let's look at how this government uses the powers it has. This very week, they decided to invoke the never-before-used Emergency Act. An act with such vast powers, it was not used after the attacks of three buildings and had shot a Canadian soldier dead. Was not used with the blockades of the pipeline in British Columbia.
Well,
This powers will allow the government to invade the privacy, the freedoms, and even the bank accounts of Canadians. That's why Conservatives will fight it all the way.
All black.
Les conservateurs vont nous battre
Not even
contre
so
ces
far.
The Conservatives will fight these abuses.
Sorry. I think kind of earlier with the power was completely dark. 25, 35,
censor
kind
what
of
Canadians see and say online.
I thank my colleague for his leadership speech, Mr. Speaker. Maybe it's not the right forum. Maybe he should do that in his own caucus meeting room, and maybe not here, because I'm talking about something else, Mr. Speaker. We're talking about.
Now we have a point of order from Leans Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rita Lakes.
Yeah, thanks, Speaker. So just before the member for Carleton started speaking, or just after he started speaking, the member for Kingston and the Islands did say in a volume loud enough for all members in the House to hear that another member in this House, another honourable member, had lied. And I believe if you check with the folks from Hansard, they would confirm, or the folks at the table heard the same thing. I would invite that member, of course, to unreservedly apologize for impugning the character and speaking in an unparliamentary way about an honourable member of this place.
I see the member for Kingston and the Islands is standing.
Mr. Speaker, because it is not appropriate to call another member a liar in this House, I certainly take that comment back. But I will say, for 8 minutes, we watched the man.
I know, thank you. Let's go back to questions and comments. Actually, no, sorry. All right, we done?
Oh my God.
I thought now that we get into the debate on this bill that we would have a nice quiet time talking about the bill and the bill before us.
Because it was more of a leadership speech towards his friends here, maybe not adapted to the debate that's in front of us today, which is a very important debate on our culture, on who we are as Canadians.
I voted against both of them.
To support our Canadian stories, our musicians, our actors, our directors, Mr. Speaker. This is the member of Parliament to ask a question that had anything to do even closely to this bill, but he didn't. Hope they're going to support it.
Question commentaire, questions and comments. Asking questions. I just want to make sure we want to be disciplined in how we ask our questions so that everybody gets an opportunity, of course, to do that. But before we do that, we have a point of order from the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know in the province of Ontario, in the workplace, you're mandated to wear a mask. When I look across, 20% of the Conservative caucus is not wearing a mask. And I would look to the member from Carleton as even an Ontario member of Parliament. Is there any obligation
perspective? Yesterday, we saw big strides taken towards restoring public order in Ottawa as a result of a massive joint operation led by the Integrated Central Command, which is made up of the Ottawa Police Service, the Ontario Provincial Police, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. So far, police have made over 100 arrests, removed many vehicles, and have cleared the areas around Rideau and Sussex. In fact, many of the blockades in the downtown core have either left.
In Ottawa, the truckers are beginning to be arrested, but have already sparked a global protest movement. Hello there, you 4.9 million wonders existing beyond labels and condemnation. Welcome to the revolution that you started, that you're participating in.
Yeah.
What's going on with these Canadian truckers? Arrests have been made, and as I always say, if there is any evidence of wrongdoing, I obviously condemn it outright without question or doubt. But what seems to be happening at the moment is a movement is emerging around these protests. People want their voice to be heard. It's becoming a worldwide movement. In this video, we're asking, along with the help of the writer Matt Taibbi, why did leaders begin to condemn huge portions of the population as being deplorables, undesirables? What's with the media never accurately reporting numbers of people that are protesting? What is the strategy here? Remember, you can tell me in the comments below what you think the election of Donald Trump to now the dissent of thousands of is nick people's GoFundMe money or shut down people's Facebook page. Because you know what? I'm willing to have the conversation. I'm willing to be wrong, and I'm willing to talk to people that are wrong. And that way, collectively, through our shared oppression, censorship, pursuit of the objectives of the powerful, condemnation, perjurizing a group of people that a couple of months ago, what mandate? The truckers are villains. To levelling accusations of treason, sedition, occupation, insurrection. These are pretty powerful words to bandy around. Canadian authorities did everything but the obvious move, meeting protesters head on and negotiating with them in realistic terms. That's the culture you want to be in, right? Like, what I sometimes think when I see the rise of Puritanism, authoritarianism, an inability for people to have a conversation or be rehabilitated or forgiven or wrong, I think, like, even if people are wrong, you can then talk to them. Like, you know, I don't agree with what you're saying. I don't agree with it. Should we have a conversation about it rather than, you're wrong, there's an eliminating you from reality? What kind of, where's that lead? How does that work? How's that ever going to work? It will not work. It's not reality. It's the thing. The incredible thing about politicians like Trudeau is that they genuinely seem sure their opposition is limited to small extremist pockets. This is how we get to a place where over half of America is reflexively denounced as racist or white supremacist. Another brilliant American political fashion adopted by Trudeau, who last year denounced anti-vaxxers as misogynists and racist, saying that people that are anti-vax are, women and racist. Why would that be a thing? This delusional blindness has been on display all over the world for at least 6 or 7 years now. Trump won, and the excuses that piled up were legend. We had Matt Taibbi on our podcast, Under the Skin, where we talked about these issues, and it seems that the rise of populism is obviously congruent with people noticing that existing political models aren't represent threat. You have to ally populism with a set of beliefs, which in some cases it may naturally be allied with. There may be nationalism, there may even be racism. But to say that populism, because I consider myself a populist, i.e. what I believe is that ordinary people should have control of the means of productions, the means of control, the means of communication, that we should have actual, real democracy. That's what I believe in. The population, the populare, should have control of their own resources. I know that there is a tendency to amplify particular narratives in order not to protect us from this is a threat to this. We were told the true victorious result had simply not been allowed to come out, thanks to a conspiracy of cheaters whose ranks kept growing as more truths were uncovered. It was the fault of the New York Times, Macedonian troll farms, misogynists, deplorables, WikiLeaks, Assad, suburban women lacking gender consciousness, Bernie bros, Bernie himself for not campaigning hard enough, Facebook, Twitter, and most importantly, Russians. Yes, I know that Donald Trump has spent over a year now crisscrossing the country, denying his 2020 electoral defeat, but that's the point. Supposedly smart people mock him for that when he spent years doing the same thing, and somehow they think that's weird at all. So right, if you think Trump's denial of the outcome of the 2020 election is wrong, then you would have to think that the 2016 Farrago was also wrong, and vice versa, right? The many related stories of populist uprisings, from Trump's win to the ascent of Jeremy Corbyn to the protests to Brexit, establishment politicians kept searching for the certainly illegitimate and probably foreign source of their problems. Meanwhile, the real issue is usually a simple two-step progression in which people all over the planet first just dislike their leaders, then reacted badly to being called racist traitors for saying so. Of course, I would not deny the reality of racism, but I would also not deny the reality that leaders are unpopular because they are out of touch with the people that they govern and are condemnatory of them. And it's pretty clear there's a whole professional class of media, reporters, journalists, TV media, in a process that snowballed the identity stuff. I'm pretty sympathetic to that. I mean stuff like where anti-vax now means anti-mandate. Like, definitions are changing. And we've also got an interesting video coming up around how the term terrorism can be applied to misinformation, so watch out for that. Their relentless propaganda campaigns have given most of the world an out-group identity by now. Even a growing segment of the intellectual class and their leaders still act like there's a cellar somewhere in which all their detractors can be stuffed, instead of just treating them like legitimate political actors whose complaints need to be dealt with. Emboldened, another convoy is now organising to descend on Washington. The hashtag Truckers Convoy 2022 already has millions of interactions, and the main Facebook groups have gained 200,000 members in 2 weeks. Hopefully that won't be bad and cancelled. Oh, it has been. That's good. Always a sign that you're living in an open democracy when certain viewpoints are completely cancelled. They're coming, but it seems like the only thing our thinking classes can think to do in response is mass-produce news stories denouncing everyone involved as neo-Nazi QAnon loons, basically a repeat of Trudeau's fringe approach, which itself is inherited from anti-Trump now in a debate, a conversation about what is essentially their democracy, along with everyone else's democracy. That's what democracy means. By the time these people realise that what they're dealing with is bigger than a caricature, it'll be too late. There has never been a plan for dealing with the Trump phenomenon, or leavers, or any other populist uprising in the modern era. All our leaders have come up with are strategies of suppression and containment, combinations of policing, surveillance, censorship, and propaganda. Mostly just mocking. Obviously, when I'm covering a subject like this, I know that, like last time, there'll be some pushback. Even people saying Russell Brand's right wing because he supports the truckers. Now, I don't believe I am right wing. I also don't think those labels matter anymore. Right wing, left wing, you know, it's the angel in the middle that matters. It's the crow between the wings. To us, and it's important that we keep our conversation going. Who knows? There probably are members of that protest that hold some pretty crazy views about all sorts of stuff. But if we continue to delegitimize an entire movement, how are we going to get anywhere? And in fact, isn't condemning an entire group because of the behavior of one or two individuals one of the key components of bigotry and prejudice? We're told the one thing we need to know about the opposition is that it's insane, wrong, and won't get anywhere, which brings us back to Freedom Convoy. Virtually every behaviour of individual protesters or polls showing routinely make sure that the word convoy is surgically attached in headlines to delegitimizing rhetoric, as in the Independent's Freedom Convoy pushed by QAnon, or NBC's as US truckers convoy picks up momentum, foreign meddling adds to fray. Wow, it's almost like there are a set of pre-existing narratives that can be bolted on to what it seems like from an overview is democracy has become tainted. You can't get any access through democratic means by voting because you know by now that both parties are completely controlled by lobbyists. So you protest till nothing is left. That's why this has to be effective. That's why this convoy has to be successful. Not just for people who agree with them, but for all of us, because the alternative is the closing down of legitimate means of protest. I'm not saying there aren't people in any protest that are bad actors. Of course there are. In any room with 100 people in it, you're going to leaders around the world seem more interested now in defending the principle of not listening than in the practical question of amping down a mass covering of officials. So it necessarily has to cover outside it. It is also important that we as individuals remain open-minded, open-hearted, free from bigotry and prejudice. No room, no place for that anymore. We have to reach out lovingly to one and have our own prejudices, flaws, and challenges, but we enter into discourse with good faith and open hearts. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Hit me up and let me know. Let me know. Hit me up. Give this channel a subscribe because we're in a very...
Please. Oh my god, my apocalypse.
Learn from life.
Daddy's
Canadian freedom truckers have kept on trucking for freedom. Why does the legacy media misrepresent it? Even I talked about it. I've done a video this week. If you watched it, I'll throw to it at the end, you know. And when it was talked about Twitter, people just took the YouTube short and used that and right wing, anti-vax, all that kind of stuff. You know how this stuff goes now, right? So for the record, obviously, if this trucker convoy were to descend into violence, antipathy, hatred and loathing, I wouldn't support that. But what I do agree with is the right of people in a democracy to have a voice, the right of people to protest, to have an opinion, to communicate peacefully. The Freedom Convoy, which began as a working class uprising, the Justin Trudeau's federal vaccine man hemisphere populism, by the way, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. Always you hear right-wing populism. Me, I'd be into populism in terms of the representation of the views of the population, the people's views, deep state policy, in order that we could live in a democracy. That's a kind of populism. From the massive convoy in Ottawa to the border blockade in southern Alberta, the Freedom Convoy is now spawning parallel movements in Australia, the Netherlands, and potentially elsewhere. I've not read about that, I've not heard about that, I've not seen that anywhere of you. We actually are a news channel. I can't get any news. Where's the news? Nothing's happening. There's nothing to see. And the corporate media's slanted coverage of the movement is making it obvious to the public who it can trust and who it cannot. News organisations, despite drawing tens of thousands of supporters to Canada's capital of Ottawa, the grassroots protest has scarcely received fair coverage in the mainstream press. Sometimes I feel like the professional class, ordinary working people, I mean, they don't like them.
You guys are giving me the runaround.
And just want an excuse to, they're right wing. I really do, because that's how they talk about them all the time. The legacy media encourage minority, packed with racists, homophobes, and would-be January the 6th style insurrectionists and conspiracy theorists opposed to medical science. One of the things I've worked
So you're
out
making
as a
sign
result of
into
my
the Samsung
conversations
account
the skin as a
through
result of
Microsoft.
continuing news
But why?
reporting on our channel here is that there are certain issues that if you
Because I
continue to
can't
promote
activate
them
my
around
phone.
social justice issues, around which I am actually extremely sympathetic, because I really
The way you
believe
would
people's rights to
verify
be
my
whoever
Samsung
they are,
account is through
and
text.
by racism and prejudice and
Good
hatred,
dicks.
and it's just something I cannot buy. By highlighting these issues, an ample or a majority, sexually or ethnically, your interest will be determined by being very loving and accepting and tolerant to one another. Why?
Because you gotta maneuver the computer without your fucking keyboard is made so that you fucking break it. I'm setting the apparently retirement home residents that live in my. Okay. These up. All up in my shit. Gilly, snuggy dooby. No, don't. We're good. Yeah, I think we're good. Yeah. Mama. Okay. Oh, well, you missed it. Here, watch. Okay. Mama. Yes, you are my slave. Don't chew on wires. Yes, heavy. Smart calendar. A smarter calendar. No, skip. Get the latest Google tips and updates. Skip. Okay, sure, I'll get you one. Okay. Oh, I can still download apps. Oh, you just drilled on me. That's what it's like when you drill on me. Nope. I can't see. I can't see. You're away. Oh. Go to kisses. Really? Jeez. Headbutted me in the face. Headbutted me in the face. And just headbutted me in the face. Okay, move. Shit at me. Oh, I guess some other god. Cool down. Or not, whichever. Shit at me. Oh, I guess some other god. Cool down. Or not, whichever. Oh my god, are you serious? You just get. Oh. Hi. No. Okay. Oh. Oh, now there's a sixth stick. No. Give me a live stream for YouTube now. All the news are live stream. No. Skip all those. Skip all it. No. Thank you. Skip. Done. Okay. I'm gonna fucking lose my shit. I don't understand how this is possible, but like, how is it possible that you guys, if you tell me what. Because around this time, the night crew tends to be a little bit more talkative. Out. Now,
Parce que le gros succès, il est arrivé après,
I was assuming it was suffocating well.
quasiment gênant. Mais le gros succès avait été une bombe totale.
Oui, ça c'est sûr et certain. C'est genre d'en parle. C'est partout, mais c'est fait dans d'autres langues aussi. Hein?
Oui.
Oui. Bon, moi, je veux justement, qui avait copié, c'est un copier-coller, qui avait sa deuxième chanson, mais qui avait changé les paroles, là, puis j'avais même dit. À toi, moi, j'écoutais dans votre jeu, je ne dis pas ça, dans le game.
Oui.
Il y avait Maxime Landry qui était là à soir.
Oui.
Il a chanté une chanson, La pluie de septembre. Bon, quand ça a commencé, j'entendais la musique, j'ai dit, il va chanter la chanson, les yeux bleus, pleurant sous la pluie. C'est vrai. Mais non, c'est la même musique, il a changé les paroles.
Ah, oui.
Je trouve ça clair. Moi, quand je chante des rêves de même.
Parce que je ne connais pas cette chanson. Je vais mettre tout pour.
Francis Cabrel, vous devez le connaître.
Non. Francis Cabrel, je vais vous faire une confidence. C'est un artiste qui m'était.
Ah.
Mais là, il ne faut pas dire trop fort. Parce qu'il y a des gens, des fois, qui n'aiment pas ça, parce que les autres aiment bien l'artiste. Francis Cabrel, c'est un artiste qui m'intéresse.
Ben, moi, il y avait cette chanson-là qui est faite, que j'ai bien aimée, Les yeux bleus pleurant sous la pluie. Moi, je l'ai aimée. Mais Maxime Landry, apprendre la musique, puis changer les paroles, ça fait
C'est parce que la question que je me pose, est-ce que Cabrel lui-même avait fait une adaptation? Parce que lui-même avait fait une adaptation. Parce que là, si je ne me trompe pas, je regarde la chanson de Cabrel, Les yeux bleus pleurant sous la pluie.
Oui, c'est ça.
Ben, c'est une chanson de Willie Nelson. Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Oui, vous avez raison. La chanson en français, oui,
c'est ça. Donc, Maxime Landry a fait une deuxième adaptation en français, chose qui arrive, qui est arrivée parfois.
Oui, il a gardé les mêmes paroles, mais sensiblement, comme ça dire de français.
Comme je le disais, avec qu'elle est d'accord. Diffuser les chansons comme ça.
Plus de musique, bonne.
Ça veut dire que des choses. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'il comprend bien on peut voir dans les déclarations récentes du Premier ministre, lorsqu'il mentionnait à ses conférences de presse, aux gens qui étaient pour eux, c'est pas un service essentiel. Non, c'est l'équipement très indispensable. Et la raison, je ne pense pas que ce soit plus grave dans la population grave. Il n'y a pas une connaissance, une compréhension du phénomène religieux. On en a une connaissance la plus
Wow. Non. Yeah, okay, that's working. Is that working? There you go. Okay, I'm buggy as fuck, whatever. Shut up. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Nope. What's wrong with that? I know, it's not the most recent one.
Undersea, excuse me, deep sea time again. So they want to control it, they want to get into it, they want to discover it, and they want to develop it. That's true. So how serious of the decades militaries have proposed some pretty cockamamie stuff. Yeah. And with varying degrees of seriousness or intention. And we know that, at least from the perspective of the PRC, from China's perspective, this is a real thing that is happening. It's part of the 5-year economic plan they released in March of 2016, and it's ranked as number 2 on the list of the government's top 100 science and technology priorities. You can imagine if you could gain access to, any kind of mineral deposits that were before this point inaccessible. Is government's tops down there, maybe some stuff that's just been dormant for years and years and years, centuries, millennia. That brings this huge economic leverage. An underground, already operating an underground military base for naval forces. It's called the Yulin Naval Base. It's built for nuclear submarines. It's on the southern outside of the Chinese government. Learned about this because other governments, intelligence agencies were reporting it. China's just going to probably let this one slide. Yeah. Dude, according to the reconnaissance, it's like caverns, right? That's the idea that you can store up to the surface is large enough to accommodate aircraft carriers too, which the government is actively building. And I don't particularly care for it when we hear alarmism about another country doing things that other countries have been doing for a while. And I think a lot of people can agree when I say that oftentimes, at least in the U.S., some things like this come up at just the right moment to distract people from a different issue. China. Oh boy. I wish you guys could see Noel's face right now, because just like Matt's look around, he dropped it and then leaned back. I was the question. Did we mentioned that on the air before? Yeah, we mentioned that his emoji game is on point. Yes, it is on point. So we wanted to provide some mention of things. It is on point. So we wanted to provide some examples of how this is actually happening. At this point, as we report this, we have to conclude that it may never be possible to know exactly how many, but it is almost entirely certain that there are more on the way, possibly being built now. Programs continue to prosper, especially the private ones who are working with militaries. That moon base is not far away, you guys. Space? I mean, yeah, we're just we take it to space. I mean, yeah, we're just gonna shoot you off. Dude, oh my god, it's like a nightmare escape. Weird little. I'm sure anything about that.
What?
At 514-429-3901 or visit resap.ca. No one likes what-if questions. What if a loved one can no longer come along? Has the answers, the finest care, devoted staff, all in a cozy West Island setting for 30 years. Call 514-680. Operated. Navigate some of life's most difficult moments. They offer pre-planning services, comfortable and spacious visitation and reception rooms, cremation on site, as well as a unique columbarium that is integrated in their breathtaking chapels. JJ Cardinal Funeral Home. Let their family serve your family with understanding, compassion, and integrity. Call 514-631-1511 or visit jjcardinal.ca. It's hard to improve Tuesday to Thursday. Get a dozen plain sesame, coffee, or everything bagels for only $8.88. Just use the promo code AM800. They also have bagel burgers, sandwiches, healthy salads with vegan options, Danish, and coffee. Order online. Let's look how this government uses the powers it has. This very week.
Yeah. Ugh.
I will say that, there are plenty of times where, say, you cook something and it's kind of I'll get rid of him, the visitor you remove. I would go for something more ambient anyway. I could be a big corporation. We'll change all that style of things. Another big thing, people are having. For person to person, I think we have phenomenal ability to create a particularly uncomfortable, unpleasant room. Okay, well, if we're going to go about this exercise, I think we need to establish a few rules. First of all, I'd say the goal is to create the most unpleasant environment we can possibly imagine. But at the same time, we've got to have some kind of limit because we're not going to build a torture chamber, right? We're assuming, but we're not. Well, no, I don't want to build a So let's assume a couple things. Number one, the occupant of this room is not a prisoner and can leave at any time. And number two, we're not going to consider anything that could be like violent.
They were just talking about fucking, they're not going to do, we call it fucking undertones, because that's what they've been doing up until now, where they are talking, because things kind of like read between the lines language. And it's kind of like, yeah, you can make satire and fun and games to a certain extent, though.
Oui, c'est très important de faire ça. Premier ça, l'outil, comment utiliser l'outil, comme j'ai expliqué tout à l'heure, comment bien créer l'encre du chien traditionnel. Et maintenant, il y a un autre sorte d'encre, l'encre japonaise s'appelle Sumi aussi. Les Japonais ici utilisent dans
Still show a couple of states where they've been hacked off the blue elephant. As we were on our London routine, we were driving nice out of the park and we spotted Pendant la prolongation, on a quand même donné la rondelle 2 fois au client. Le défenseur par défense qui va l'échanger tout le temps, Jeff Bezos, quand il a sauté dans les draps de COVID, c'est juste que là, elle était plus grand. OK, là, il faut que je vous laisse. Merci beaucoup. Bye-bye. 2h13, quart de nuit.
Pour parler en direct avec Sylvain Ménard. Quart de nuit de Montréal.
24 667 52 Bardèche.
Ça va discuter. Trouver, oui, Jeunesse Centrale Canada.
Très bien, ben oui, là, le festival est terminé. On profite de la vie berlinoise, mais ça s'est très bien passé, la grande première mondiale de ski.
Mais est-ce que quand vous êtes à Berlin, puis il y a un délai, mais c'est normal. Parce que la prochaine fois, on va utiliser les hologrammes de Radio-Canada en direct de Pékin, mais on n'a pas encore la technologie. En attendant, là, vous êtes à Berlin, ça fait des années qu'on n'a pas voyagé, on ne fera pas semblant. Et comment ça se passe? Est-ce que vous avez fait de la MD? Est-ce que vous êtes dans un rave avec du Rammstein? Qu'est-ce que vous avez fait de fou, là?
Ben, c'est certain que j'étais avec Florence, donc une MD attendait pas là. Toujours en deux rave. C'est quand même en grande équipe, on était avec la petite partie, avec Philippe, tout le monde était là. Donc c'était un petit peu un retour à la vie. Et même...
A lot of these police are actually laughing behind the police line. It's absolutely crazy. No matter what party,
Keeping non-violent demonstrators, they're seeing their bank accounts blocked. The Emergencies Act has been used. How's that gone down?
Crazy. Dude.
Allegedly raping a minor, somebody who's under 18 in France. And the other one was, of course, his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. His lawyers say that he was 75 years old, that he'd been put in jail for things that he felt that he was not guilty of, and I have no idea, I have no answer on this one, but that it is a horrible place to be. It's the Prison de la Santé has been replaced by a number of French politicians have been imprisoned, and they've all had a very different attitude to conditions in prison after they were there. And he was depressed, he felt, and that he was not given, he was not a flight risk, and he ought to have been allowed to wait until the trial began outside the jail. He also felt that he was being driven into an extremely fraught situation where justice was supposed to look like it was very harsh, just because it was part of this American story. If you look at other sides and you speak to journalists who've been following the matter, they say that women were suspected or accused of having trafficked more than 1,000 very young women for Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, I don't remember now. His reputation flowed into his relationship with Epstein. But it seems that with enough money and power, many of Epstein's associates have managed to avoid any serious consequences. I think Teddy Armstrong. If the Jeffrey Epstein scandals have taught us one thing, it's that you can get away scot-free with almost anything provided you're rich, famous and influential. A look back at what fate befell the usual suspects in the Epstein affair tells us exactly that. First, there's Prince Andrew, his former royal.
And for someone with a global reputation such as York, this is extremely important. It is to be welcomed that he has now pledged to support the fight against the evils of sex trafficking and its victims. To demonstrate his seriousness in this endeavour and his respect for those affected by abuse and the people of our city, I would ask that his first act of contrition is to confirm his support for the withdrawal of his ducal title.
His accuser, Virginia Giuffre, is set to receive a king's ransom from the prince to the tune of £12 million. That's a handsome amount, despite the two how it became public. He spoke at the 2020 Democratic National Convention.
I don't know what's about the Bill Black. It's Trump's us versus them, America. Against Joe Biden's America.
And this Epstein lawyer, Alan, division and hatred and others exposed for.
But it's filled with empathy as it possibly be. Our demonstration fills up with empathy. Trudeau uses his frank means of communication to describe how empathetic he is. By the way, as I say in the column, he's a total cock.
Okay. Just shooting at protesters. Overboard. Oh my god. Not anymore. Crowds. No, they don't do anything.
We're doing this in a form of sacrifice, and it's through sacrifice that Jesus taught us.
Just
moving, we've informed them if they want to take us to jail, that's going to be their alternative. But moving, we've been peaceful, we've been demonstrating our rights and applying them in accordance to the law.
What do you think the optics would be if the police came in and started arresting people and removing trucks?
I think it'll be what we would refer to as a shooting at themselves in the foot. Because the people are standing up for something that we believe in for the country, not just for individual ideology coming from trucking convoy, but with a desire, a passion in our heart, which we deeply believe
is the freedoms of this country that's democratic.
Why? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fucking devices. Oh,
Chief White House propagandist Baghdad Bob Jansaki snapping when forced to respond to Biden's free crack pipes to defeat. Here for the first time in life, of course, tap that red button down below to subscribe. Just the White House propaganda. The Biden administration has absolutely lost their marbles. This, wow, the New York mayor. Make your anxiety.
shut up. Okay, so you're Jordan Peterson 2021. You know this channel. Watch. You look at the fucking God said. Yeah, 2022. They changed the author. Speed of author. And then remember passion. See, like, they know I know Kirk knows about this stupid shit. Angela Vista 7? Why the fuck did you do that? Oh, okay. Not even it. Must be showing.
Been receiving from the NBN are down 450 million in this half compared to the prior half. The commercial works for helping to build the NBN, that's down 200 million. But as that washes through, what you can see is that underlying momentum. So, as you say, EBITDA was up 5.1%, earnings per share on an underlying basis was up 55%. So that's really encouraging. As we move into FY23, those transitional effects will go on, and we can see all of that nice growth coming through. Okay, so let's go to that though. The underlying earnings per share comes in at just over.
Seriously?
Sorry to my fellow Conservatives, but Canada's world-famous truck blockade is not a fight for freedom against the idiotically woke Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's now channeling his inner Fidel Castro. No, it's a fight between one set of bullies and another. Just take a look at this picture from Blockade in Ottawa. Protesters flying the flag of freedom, all right, that's great. But they're doing it while taking away the freedom of everyone else to use that road. And that is just one example of 1,000. I'll show some more in a second. But to me, the big picture is this. I wouldn't trust my freedom with either side. In fact, this whole confrontation is Canada's shame, with freedom up in smoke. Now, I get it. I sure get the excitement of this 3-week blockade of Ottawa and even the coming border crossings to the United States has had for many of the right, including Donald Trump. I mean, it's got the right can do revolutions too. They can do it just as well as the left. They can stick it to the big guy. They can.
Sophia made a good choice with that coffee and getting her COVID-19 booster.
All morning's been eating at me after hearing that Dougie Ford there, what we call the friggin' state of emergency in Ontario, for what? For a peaceful protest? This is bullshit. Oh, hang on, I know why. Because of Ford and GM breathing down his fucking neck. Because the friggin' can't get their goddamn car parts from the Windsor border. That's what it's all coming down to. State of emergency
in Chicago.
You want to know what state of emergency was? When Black Lives Matter in Minneapolis burned half the fucking city down. That would have been a state of emergency.
Yeah.
Looting, murder, friggin' blowing up buildings, tearing up cars, flipping them all over, riots. And they never called it a state of
No,
emergency.
he said they didn't have me back. I watched it for 17 days.
I know why. Because you're not making any goddamn money. That's what it comes down to. You're not making any money. You still got your little business on the side and making your sticky
And they tried to do like black squares on like Twitter or whatever, like Black Hill Friday fucking was to put like for Black Lives Matter. That's not what happened. That's not what it's for. Like it's not a thing. It's just literally the media went black.
Per shot, that's what they say. I don't know. Don't mark my words for that. As I don't know. I heard that. I don't know. I didn't look into it. So don't go freaking out on my page. I'm just tired of it. You know, I know 4 people that had the shots, and I think 3 more boosted too. So, and they got all right. Just like Trudeau got COVID. Me, I have not had a shot. I am not vaccinated. Just like the Ottawa police, they do not need to be vaccinated. It's up to them, their choice. Meanwhile, other companies are firing people. Nurses are getting kicked out. Doctors are leaving. And you're fucking crying that it's a short staff. Like, what to do? It's their choice. That's what freaking freedom is about. Not what it's about now. You guys hold the line, man. Hold the line. You tell the guys, oh, police, that's another thing. I go, whatever. They're a bunch of freaking government goons that want they're acting on the politicians' reaction. They're not for
CMP for approximately 50. We want to clarify what the new emergency proclamation issued last night means. Under the order, Canadians continue to be allowed to come to Ottawa with their children if they choose to engage in peaceful, lawful protest. The order only restricts people from coming to Ottawa with the intention to engage in violence, block critical infrastructure.
What the fuck?
They're segregated the whole area. East, come this way, and they're segregating this way.
What is that? This was done before, a few hours before Trudeau came out with his emergency powers speech.
You've accomplished an awful lot already. The Conservative leadership has crumbled, and Aaron O'Toole has been replaced by someone who is giving a fair bit of voice to your concerns. You now have a voice in the House of Commons. All the people you represent have a voice in the House of Commons. You have 4 provinces that have moved quite precipitously in the direction that the protest was hoping to be expected under the circumstances. I'd like to commend all of you for your diligence and work on accomplishing what you have accomplished under trying conditions, for keeping your heads in a way that's actually being, you haven't taken the bait, you haven't to move forward without rancor, to a normative peace and the reestablish
all of this stuff. And Jordan, if you're watching today, I'm really honored to call you a friend and someone that let me join the ride for a year and a half when we toured together. I wanted to bring up once, he said it's going to get more difficult until Trudeau ramped everything up, right? There were premiers in Alberta and some of the other provinces who were saying
Politico requires 4 doses to be considered fully vaccinated, amongst many other restrictions. And the Israeli people seem to have had Israeli nationalists. It's usually the other way around. So when the media and others on social make the claim that these protests are fueled by far-right here in the U.S. and in
right-wing organizers who get involved in these.
Have these people here, so it's just got to be one or the other.
Right. We have a tribal politics that says you must be on one side of the set about X, Y, or Z. You must pick a side. People are like, well, I don't know. Why do I have to pick a side? Well, you have to pick a side.
So the media has to ignore confounding variables or things that would make it harder to associate a group with one side. They have to just like the fact that these are working class people, or there was maybe like 2 Nazi signs somewhere. Talk about how just that.
Well, what I would say to that point, and disagree with you there, and say that yes, they're not white supremacist far right wingers in Israel, but there is a massive faction of ethno supremacist far right wingers within the Israel.
Vaccination changed from the act of introducing a vaccine that provides immunity to a vaccine that, of course, no vaccine is 100%. You got the measles vaccine, you would still end up with measles. It was are some very rare breakthrough, extremely rare. I don't personally know anyone who got the measles vaccine and still ended up with measles. Maybe you do. If I got the measles vaccine